after the hour of 6 o'clock. It is a Monday morning. Ooh, I forgot about that part of God Bless America from Leanne Rhymes. What I didn't forget about is because I've been getting kickbacks on YouTube every once in a while that is a banned song in Russia. I don't know. I think they're just trying to jive me is all they are. Anyway, good morning, Las Vegas. We are here in studio at 2207 7th Street. Thanking you for being along with us this morning in our attempt to cover the scriptures. Yep. We're going through the Bible verse by verse, chapter by chapter. We've been through the Bible a couple of times already. This is our third round. I don't know if the first round really qualifies. We went through the one-year Bible the first time, and I think we just highlighted some. But a few years back, I think it was about 3 years back or so, we began recording these teachings on Facebook and on YouTube. And so we've gone around full circle. It was right about here, kind of closer to the mid-30s of the book of Ezekiel, till we began to record them. And we have been I have morning teaching from Genesis 1 all the way to the last chapter of the book of Revelation, chapter, 22, something like that. And I have those already saved, and I'm going to drop them on our external hard drive. Maybe I should write that on my notes. What do you say? Because if not, you know how that goes. Anyway, let's get into the scriptures today, and we are going to do something that we normally don't do. Okay, but before I tell you about that, let me tell you that I have a prayer line open for you. Thank you, Pauline. 505-310-9658 is the number. That will be active till 8 o'clock in the morning. And also we have an email address that our midday dude, Cliff Schaefer, has set up. If you want to try email when it comes down to your prayer request, it's cliff@klyn@gmail.com. And that's it. Now, we can always use some help here at Cornerstone Church. I'm still looking for a person to do a Saturday Spanish program. If you're interested in DJing, you say, well, I've never done it before. That's kind of the person we're looking for, man. Or if you sit out there and say, well, I've done it before and I liked it, and well, that's still the person that we're looking for. You kind of get my drift. Anyway, good morning. Could always use some help here. 95.7. Help out on the weekends, help out later. There's a lot of different things that we can do. It belongs to Cornerstone Church and the body of Christ here in Las Vegas, so we're not beholden to any corporation or anything that say, well, they won't let us do that. Anyway, so let's move on to Ezekiel chapter 40, part 2. And I'm going to take that panel off for those that are listening with us here or watching and listening on Facebook or on YouTube. Going to do something different, and almost embarrassed to say this, but I think it fits where we are at least for maybe today or so. We're going to go, I'm having a hard time. We're going to use the Message Bible. This morning, we're going to use the Message Bible primarily in our study. In these portions of scriptures that we are in, it's explaining a vision that Ezekiel had, and we covered this on Friday's program as we give the intro to this last section of the book of Ezekiel from chapter 40 to 48, a vision of a temple. If we went up to the beginning of the book, and I'm trying to avoid going there, because if I go to verse 1, then I'm going to go to verse 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and cover a lot of stuff that we covered on Friday's program. But what happened is that God, in a vision, takes Ezekiel from Babylon over to a high mountain in Israel. And down below, he can see the city. That is the focal point of what God wants to show Ezekiel. And in that city is a temple. We've spoke a little bit and we understand what the temple is. The temple is designed, constructed, to be the house of God. So that's the main point of a temple. Well, yes, there were sacrifices, yes, but it was the residence of God. That was God's apartment. It was God's, well, I don't know if we could say this, but it was God's Airbnb. That was God's place to where he put his presence in the temple, and we're going to see that here in these chapters that we're looking at. So what's the background? The background of the temple really started off with a tabernacle in the wilderness with Moses. Moses went up to the mountain and he got specific instructions of a lot of stuff, including a tabernacle. And so specific down to the materials, the sizes, how everything was going to put together on this tabernacle. There was going to be a tent, very detailed. I have to keep on telling you that over and over again because all this is in very detail, and that's why we're going to the Message today instead of the New King James or even maybe the English Standard Version, and see if that kind of loosens it up for us a little bit, puts it in some dimensions that we might be able to understand, especially a little bit better. But it's a place for God to live, and the tabernacle of Moses was designed to be set up and then to be folded up and transported along with the people in the wilderness. And then they took the tabernacle into the promised land with them, and it was set up in different places, basically in southern Israel, in the promised land, the land of milk and honey. Finally, after 40 years, the Hebrews, with Joshua as their leader, crossed over the Jordan, went into, and that's a really interesting story, the priests with the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders, walking over the Jordan River as an angel of the Lord mounted up the water so they could walk on the dry riverbed. Oh, my God. Yes, my God, able to do exceedingly abundantly above that we are able to ask or think. And then there was a temple. So we went from a tabernacle that's existed in Israel for many years, way past the time of, and then David comes, the second king of Israel, has a desire to build a temple, and the prophet is sent back by God to say, you tell him it wasn't such a good idea for him to do it, but but your son will make a house for me. So we have the Temple of Solomon. And it was to detail, it was elegant, elaborate, whatever adverb you want to add onto that. It was the cat's pajamas. People from all over the known world had to come and see Solomon's temple. They couldn't go in, but at least they could check it from the outside. Even the Babylonians came to check it out at one time or another. But then the Babylonians ended up coming because of the sin of Israel, and they destroyed the temple, tore down the walls around Jerusalem. And that's where we come up to the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel is captive in Babylon. but God takes him to Israel to show him. So here's the mindset, here's the environment. The environment of the people in Babylon is that there is no more temple. The temple has been destroyed. Well, pretty much destroyed. It's going to be rebuilt. We'll talk about that. But first, let's say that the temple has been torn down by and large from the Babylonians. And God takes Ezekiel in a vision to show him a future temple, and he's going to go back to Babylon, and all these exiles that are there are going to hear the message of Babylon and another temple. Their temple is destroyed. 70 years after they came into Babylon, this is about the 25th year that they're in Babylon, so in about 45 years, people are going to go back like Zerubbabel, Ezra, Nehemiah, and they are going to rebuild Jerusalem and fix up the temple the best they can, the house of God, where God's presence resides amongst his people. Then history tells us that, in fact, history tells us, the Bible tells us, is that when Ezra and his people fixed the temple of Solomon the best that they could, it wasn't as glorious as it was in the time of Solomon before the Babylonians came. But it was still a place, a house for God. And God doesn't need the gold and the silver. He doesn't need that. But what God needs is for the heart of his people to be connected to his, to be seeking, as we said yesterday, first his kingdom and his righteousness. Then, and this happens before God sends his only begotten Son 2,000 years ago, is that Herod, to try to gain favor with the Jewish people, brings back the temple to the glory of Solomon's temple, and invests a ton of money in it, and Jews are all happy again because they have something that they can be proud of. He makes, what would you say today? What would be? He makes he gets a Volkswagen, which was kind of what Ezra had, well, at least it runs, and it runs good, and it gets us there, and he remade it into, the top of the top. And the people loved it, and the people were proud of it. But then Jesus told his disciples, and you go to, the 24th chapter of the book of Matthew, or the 21st chapter of the book of Luke, or the 13th chapter of the book of Mark, and God says all these stones, one stone is going to be knocked down over the other, and the Romans did that in about 72 A.D. So there's a history of tabernacles, temples. There's a history of God living amongst his people. Ezekiel says it's not over, ladies and gentlemen. Well, actually, God, the Holy Spirit, is saying it's not over. I am not abandoning my people. Now, one thing we know for sure, this temple has not been built yet. And there's some Bible teachers are going to be out there that are going to tell you, well, this is just symbolic. This is never going to happen. It's not really, they try to symbolize everything that they can understand, or it's too big for their small faith. But another group of people, including me, that think that this very possible could be the temple during the millennium, during the 1,000-year reign. So before we get into verse 20, let me explain to you just a little bit of the. Imagine Ezekiel on top of the mountain looking below. Okay? The highlight, the highlight in this square, kind of like the plaza, but much, much, much bigger, okay? Imagine a square about 10 blocks by 10 blocks, about a mile by a mile. And sitting up against the south end of a wall, because there's a wall all the way around this square, this 1 mile by 1 mile square, and sitting up against the south wall is a temple, as glorious or more glorious than any temple has been, whether Herod's, whether Solomon's, tabernacle. I mean, the tabernacle, wow, that thing was pretty darn glorious in itself, man. The materials that they use. So this is a and there's a wall all around it, and there's a gate on the east, a gate on the north, a gate on the south, so that you can go in the wall that's 10 blocks by 10 blocks, and then there's another wall, an inner wall, before you get to the temple itself. And that's the basic layout of what we're looking at here in Ezekiel chapter 40. And let me throw this out at you, because to me this is interesting. And I've been looking at, go to YouTube, or just go to your Google search engine, whatever you use, and Google Ezekiel's temple. And there's a lot of drawings that are out there. If you're just looking at the pics, there's a lot of vids of people. There's even a lot of 3D, what would you call it? I don't know what the right word is. Like an architectural idea of what it could have looked like, and people that have spent a lot of time studying these chapters and trying to conceptualize. I think that's the word that I was looking at. Trying to conceptualize what this could be looking like. But once again, it's about a mile by a mile square with a wall all around it. And then there's gates that are coming in from the three sides, the north, not the south, the north, the east, and the west. And then there's another wall, an inner wall, that's containing, I'm not going to say protecting, but containing the temple itself. And we'll be in verse 20 in just a little while.
Glory
to them all the time. But this one here, I'm telling you. 58 degrees. Hold that in your mind as we give you a weather report. Currently, it's 58 degrees, mostly cloudy today. 80% chance of thunderstorms with a high near 69, with east-northeast winds 6 to 15, gusts as high as 26 miles per hour. So, 58 now, and it's only going to get up to 69. That's what the weather report says, okay? So, tomorrow, mostly sunny. Mostly cloudy tomorrow, with also an 80% chance of showers and scattered thunderstorms, high near 62. I didn't stutter, okay? 62 degrees is what the expected high is tomorrow. South wind 6 to 14 miles per hour. Almost sounds like a weather report for Alamosa for this time of the year. Wednesday, mostly cloudy. 60% chance of thunderstorms likely. Oh, my God. Finally up into the 70s. 72 is the expected high. So here's what we're looking at. 60 what today? 69 today. And then 62 tomorrow. And then 72 on Wednesday. Southwest wind 6 to 16 on Wednesday. Gusts as high as 26 miles per hour. So that just gave you a get ready. Going to be a little cool. I know you people that have been going out for wood, that burn wood, and you've been blocking it, splitting it, stacking it, and really you're just probably, rubbing your hands together and say, yeah, finally, let's burn some wood. Okay. I don't burn wood. Never have burned wood, so let's go to Ezekiel chapter. Don't forget, prayer line is open for you right now at 505-310-9658. And the email address for prayer and encouragement is cliff@klyn@gmail.com. Now, verse 20, chapter 40, the book of Ezekiel, from the Message Bible. Shame on me. It's not even a real translation. It's just, okay. Here was another gate complex facing the north. So what we've done so far is we have described in the first 20 verses the east gate, kind of the primary gate. The gate that is facing out toward the east is pretty much the main gate. But all of these gates are going to be of the same design. Okay. And one of the reasons I'm using the Message is because it's in yards and feet and inches. And here's another gate complex facing the north, exiting the outside courtyard. He measured its length and width. It had 3 alcoves, and I had to look up the word alcove. I said, darn, Message, you could have used something different. A small recessed section of a room is an alcove. So, no, your closet is not an alcove. I guess if you took all the clothes out and you kind of, maybe put a little desk in there or something. Anyway, let's go back. Let's go back to where we were. I had to figure out what an alcove was. It had 3 alcoves on each side. Its gate post and porch were of the same as the first gate, 87.5 feet by 43 3/4 feet. So now we're looking, instead of cubits, we looked at that on Friday. We looked at the measuring line and the measuring stick that was in the hand of the angel that is like burnished bronze, the color of his skin. And some people look and say, well, mine isn't burnished bronze. Well, yeah, okay, not my fault. And he's showing him, and he's got this stick in his hand that's so many cubits, and there they are, and they're measuring all this stuff. And he told Ezekiel, you're going to have to pay attention. You're going to have to really put on your big ears, put your phone away. In fact, turn your phone off, Ezekiel, because we don't need the distraction. I want you to understand this. Get your pencil, get your paper, get your notebook, whatever it is. Maybe he turned his ringer off and was taking notes on his phone. People do that. I found that out a week ago. It had 3 alcoves on each side. Its gate posts and porch were the same as in the first gate, 87.5 feet by 43 3/4. Okay? 87 feet high. The north gate. Okay? Usually, I think the average story for buildings is 10 foot. So you're looking about an 8 to 9 foot story structure. Okay? At 43 3/4 feet wide. The windows and the palm trees were identical to the east gateway. 7 steps led up to it, and its porch faced inward. So if you look at the outer wall, okay, there were 7 steps that went into it. There is this gate that's 87 feet high, but the entrance is not 87 feet, okay? The doors aren't 87 feet. It's just the structure itself. And then if you would continue in the east, you would go to the inner wall, and there would be another 7 steps, and there would be another gate, the second east gate, before you really can see the temple itself. And that's why Ezekiel was on the high mountains. You could see it all from the vantage point that he was at. Because the wall itself, the outer wall, was 10 foot high. The windows and the palms were identical. Verse 22, on the east gateway, 7 steps led up to it, and its porch faced inward. Opposite this gate complex was a gate complex to the inside courtyard. So, I'm trying to imagine this myself, okay? You go up 7 steps, you go in through the outer east gate. There is a courtyard all around, okay, paved courtyard that is all around as you go into the first gate, and a certain distance before that you have to cross before you go up another 7 steps up to the next gate, whether you're coming from the north, whether you're coming from the west, or whether you're coming from the east. I keep wanting to say south, but the south does not have a gate because the temple is backed up against the south wall. And he says, you go, the windows and the palms are identical, 7 steps led up to his face. Opposite the gate complex was a gate complex to the inside courtyard. So you walk in through the first gate, you see the alcoves, the little rooms that are there on the side as you're walking through. And as you get to the outside, there you see the other gate and the pavement around. And you see the complex to the inside courtyard, the north and the east. The distance between the two was 175 feet. So there's a distance. And people are going to argue about, well, the cubit was only this and the handbreadth was added to it. This is, these guys do their homework. They're pretty darn close. But what's maybe there is a difference. The difference between the outer east gate and the inner east gate was 175 feet. So, if you have about a 3-foot stride, divide that into 175. And you're going to get about 33, 43, 53, about 60 some steps that are going to get you from the east outer gate to the east, because there's about 175-foot courtyard that's all around in between the 2 walls. He took me to the south gate. He took me to the south side, to the south gate complex. He measured its gate post, and its porch was the same size as the others. So am I mistaken about the south? So then it was at the west that that the wall was up. There you go. Now, and you expect them to listen to you every morning. The porch with its windows was the same size as those previously mentioned. It had 7 steps up to it. Its porch opened onto the outside courtyard with palm trees decorating its gate posts on both sides. Opposite to it, the gate complex for the inner court faced south. He measured the distance across the courtyard from gate to gate, 175 feet. So symmetrically, this thing is in its proper order. God does this stuff all the time. God loves the details, and he loves everything to be in its place and everything very symmetrical. We saw it in the tabernacle. We saw it in the temple. Now we have and this temple is much bigger than the temple of Solomon. At least the how would I call it? The complex around the temple. We'll be getting into the temple here pretty soon, and then we'll see, is it the same size as Solomon's temple or not? Another thing about this temple, it's not going to have some of the same furniture that Solomon's temple was. And we say Solomon's temple, but it was the detail and the setup that God had given to David to give to Solomon, as well as Moses. He led me into the inside courtyard through the south gate complex. I don't know. This south gate has me saying, I thought. He led me into the inside courtyard through the south gate complex. He measured it and found it the same as the outside ones. So it's still that A7 by 45 or whatever it was. Its alcoves, connecting walls, vestibule were the same. The gate complex and porch, windowed all around, measured 87.5 by 43 3/4 feet. Okay, just to tell us again that each of these 6 gates, the 2 north, the 2 east, the 2 south, I guess, because now the back of the temple is up against the west wall. Shame on me. It's alcoves, connecting walls. They're all the same. They're all the same size. They got these little rooms as you're walking through it. You see the different rooms, through the 40-some feet or 43 foot or so. You can see these little alcoves, kind of like a little dressing room or something like that that's off to the side. A vestibule of each of the gate complexes leading to the inside courtyard was 43 3/4 by 8 3/4 feet. Each vestibule faced the outside courtyard. Palm trees were carved on its doorpost. 8 steps led up to it. Then he took me to the inside courtyard on the east, measured the gate complex. It was identical to the others. Alcoves, connecting walls, vestibule, all the same. Vestibule. I didn't say vegetable. Vestibule. All the same. The gate complex and vestibule had windows all around. It measured 87.5 by 43 3/4 feet. So, okay. Its porch faced the outside courtyard. There were palm trees on the doorposts on both sides, and it had 8 steps. So there was, carved in or painted in to these doorposts were these palm trees. Very ornate. Good morning, Flo. How's everybody? Did Joe survive the weekend? My God. I hear he was dancing away for his reunion. There were palm trees on the doorposts on both sides. It had 8 steps. Verse 35, he brought me to the gate complex to the north and measured it, same measurements. Now you know why I like the message. Same measurements. Alcoves, connecting walls, vestibule with its windows, 87.5 by 43 3/4 feet. The porch faced the outside courtyard. There were palm trees on the doorposts on both sides. It had 8 steps. There was a room with a door at the vestibule at the gate complex where the burnt offerings were cleansed. 2 tables were placed within the vestibule on either side, on which the animals for burnt offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings were slaughtered. What? You're saying this is a millennial temple? And there's going to be an altar. 2 tables were placed within the vestibule, one on each side, on which the animals for burnt offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings were slaughtered. That's Old Testament. We don't do that anymore. Jesus was 2 tables. There's a lot of talk there. Let me give you an idea that I have. Okay, we want to talk about all this stuff. Could this be coming into the millennium, if this is the millennium temple, and if it's going to be a reality and we're going to see it, and could there be a combining of the best of the old and the best of the new covenant into a completed covenant? I don't know. But, if this is a real temple and it's going to be really on in Israel, and it's going to be really used, the Bible says there's going to be sacrifices. Let's see what it says. 2 tables are placed on the vestibule, one on each side. Animals for burnt offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings were slaughtered. That is so Old Testament that it just rubs us wrong. 2 tables were also placed against the outside walls of the vestibule, 4 tables inside, 4 tables outside, 8 tables in all for slaughtering the sacrificial animals. This is where people really go into overload. That's where people really say, no, well, this can't be. This has to be symbolic. It can't be because, okay, well. Sometimes you got to just open up your mind a little bit and say, it's kind of like we were saying earlier in the week. Okay, let me take out my notes because I had to write this down. We don't know everything. We read the Bible for decades and decades. Some people, they study it as a career, as a job all day long. They're studying the Bible. Even those guys don't know everything. A lot of times, as you get closer to an event, a prophetic event happening, God will give you insight that other people missed in other generations. But for sure, the things that God really wants us to know, He's going to put it out there and we're going to know. And I don't know, but I'd like to be walking through the gates. Some people won't. Here's another thing. This is going to blow your mind. Some people, believers, will not be able to walk through the outer gate. Not everybody is going to come in through the second gate. Sorry, let's follow me through the chapters. 4 tables used for burnt offerings, 31.5 inches square, 21 inches high. The tools for slaughtering the sacrificial animals and these other sacrifices were kept there. So if you know anything about butchering, which I do because I grew up, in a grocery store and stuff like that. Meat hooks, 3 inches long, were fastened to the walls. The tables were for the sacrificial animals. Verse 44, explaining the chambers for the priests. So within these walls and along the walls, there were rooms for the priests. Right where the inside gate, well, the priests have to, number one, change clothes. And then they have to clean up afterwards and get back into they need places to do that. Where are you going to hang up the gold chain around your neck? Right where the inside gate complex opened onto the inside courtyard, there were 2 rooms, one at the north gate facing the south, the other one at the south gate facing the north. The man told me, we haven't heard him speaking too much since the beginning of the chapter, the room facing south is for the priests who are in charge of the temple. The room facing north is for the priests who are in charge of the altar. Remember, there was the brazen altar in both Solomon and Moses' tabernacle temple. These priests are the sons of Zadok. the only sons of Levi permitted to come near to God to serve him. Very interesting. The sons of Zadok. Now, we had the tribe of Levi. One of the 12 original tribes was the tribe of Levi. From the tribe of Levi came the Levites. There you go. Hey, he's smart. How did he figure that one out? Out of the tribe of Levi came the Levites. Out of the Levites came the priests. If a Levite could trace his heritage all the way to the brother of Moses, Aaron, he was within the family of the priesthoods. It's a subfamily within that tribe. Now, you're even narrowing it down that much more. Only the sons of Zadok. Zadok was related to Aaron, and that was another sub of the subs, the sons of Zadok. There were other lines of priests, but only the sons of Zadok. These priests are the sons of Zadok, the only sons of Levi permitted to come near to God to serve him. You want to do an interesting lesson? Start looking at the sons of Zadok. David knew the sons of Zadok very well. He measured the inside courtyard. The angel takes out that measuring rod again, and he measured the inside courtyard 175 feet square. The altar was in front of the temple. Same way that it was, that altar, that's something that has come from the Moses tabernacle to the temple of Solomon, now into the millennial or to the temple of Ezekiel, however you want to put it. Say, yeah, you think, I think, that's all I do. There was an altar in front of the temple. And, in the wilderness, when they constructed it, as you went in through the east gate, the east door, the east opening, there was, boom, this altar, or the same way with, but now there's going to be two walls that are going to be dividing. The entrance, he led me, verse 48. He led me to the porch of the temple and measured his gatepost of the porch 8 3/4 feet high on both sides. The porch of the temple, okay, measured the gateposts. So this is, the porch, man, of the temple itself, 8 3/4 feet high on both sides. The entrance to the gate complex was 21 feet wide. Its connecting walls were 4.5 feet thick. The vestibule itself was 35 feet wide and 21 feet deep. 10 steps led up to the porch. Columns flanked in the gateposts. Or columns flanked the gateposts. And once again, you say, man, what's this all about? Questions I ask all the time. And then I have to go to some of the artist renderings and try to find out, how did these guys, and what did they think it was all about? Because it's way, 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 way above my pay grade. I should have been an architect if I would have wanted to know this. Good luck with that. Let's go to the 41st chapter. He brought me into the temple itself and measured the doorposts on each side. So apparently, Ezekiel was on top of the mountain, and then this angel takes him down, and he's walking around and looking at everything. He's making a list and checking it twice. And he's being explained along the wall, along the gates, along all the structures, the actual dimensions of it all. You say, how did he remember all this stuff? Oh, Holy Ghost. That has to be. He brought me to the temple itself, measured the doorposts on each side. Each was 10.5 feet thick. The doorposts. You're stretch out your arms, fingertip to fingertip. Most of us don't have 6 feet from fingertip to fingertip. So it's 10.5 feet thick. So about 2 of those of your spread out finger. The entrance was 17.5 feet wide. The walls on each side were 8 3/4 thick. He also measured the temple sanctuary 75 feet by 35 feet. I haven't really looked, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody doesn't have a scaled down model of this temple. I can't see anybody actually constructing it to its actual dimensions. Maybe, you never know. Well, but I could just imagine that there are probably some scaled down models. He went further in. I mean, there's somebody in Kentucky, constructed an ark to, the Ark of Noah. It wasn't the real Ark of Noah. Don't go to Kentucky looking for it. You know what I mean. So why not? He went further in and measured the doorpost at the entrance. Each of the doorposts was 3.5 feet thick. The entrance itself was 10.5 feet wide. The entrance walls were 12.25 feet thick. The entrance walls, okay? 12.25 feet thick. That's why. Now you know why I pulled out the Message Bible. Some people have been with me for a while, pulling out their Bibles and say, where is he? I can't find him. How come what he's reading is different from mine? We always were together. He measured the inside sanctuary, 35 feet square, set at the end of the main sanctuary. He told me, this is the Holy of Holies. That is
the pure heart, Lord. We thank you, oh God.
Good morning, Las Vegas. You are listening to KLYNLP. It is a Monday morning, the 11th day of September. I'm still showing a temperature of 58 degrees on this cloudy Monday morning. And it might even get cloudier. Let's see, 2-mile-an-hour breeze. Humidity at 96%. Barometric pressure is 29.94 inches. We're going to have a full weather report for you at the bottom of the hour. By then, we'll be off on our teaching portion of our program. We are in the 41st chapter of the book of Ezekiel. Prayer line open at 505-310-9658 for another hour. And then we have a 24-hour email address for prayer and encouragement, cliff@klyn@gmail.com. And we're not asking for encouragement. You can send it. You can email encouragement to us all day long. But Cliff says is that he's going to gather the prayer requests, pray for the people, and if he feels that God has an encouraging word for them, dude, you're going to have to check your inbox, your junk mail probably, to see if it's there or not. Anyway, let's get into our study for the next few minutes. So now notice this. What has happened? From the beginning of the 40th chapter, Ezekiel was taken to a mountaintop by the Spirit of the Lord. There was an angel that was very, very well tanned, like bronze. I mean, this guy was copper toned to the bone, okay? And thank you, I just made that up myself. And then they go to this structure that I saw from the top of the mountain. And what he's done is he's gone into the outer east gate, seen the steps going up, going through the gate. I would imagine he had his phone on video and had a full battery, and he's listening to everything that the guy tells him, 87 feet by 20 by 14 by 6, and all this stuff they're going through. They go into the courtyard, they come to another gate, and after they've gone, the 175 feet or something like that to the next gate, go up the steps, go into the next one, and then they see the temple. And then they approach the temple, and they take him into the temple. He measured inside the sanctuary 35 feet square. Set at the end of the main sanctuary, he told me, this is the Holy of Holies. So the sanctuary is the holy place, and then the angel tells him, there's the Holy of Holies. He measured the wall of the temple. It was 10.5 feet thick. The wall itself of the temple was, The side rooms around the temple were 7 foot wide. There were 3 floors on these side rooms, 30 rooms on each of the 3 floors. Now, what I did during our song was, for you people that are with us on YouTube or Facebook, I'm always encouraging you to get on and follow along with us. I did a search on Ezekiel's temple. If you could notice there, that's all I did was put Ezekiel's temple. Then I brought up the page for images, and there's different artists rendering of what they interpret to be the temple complex of Ezekiel. And there's tons of them. You're just going through it left and right. Look at that one, even colored. Look at how pretty Israel, My Glory, put one out over there. And, just check them out for yourself. Also, I did a video, not search, but I opened up a video page. And here are some of this. This is the one that I was looking at this weekend, the first one, from Israel, My Channel. In the Bible, there's a description of the temple that was never built, and let me tell you the temple of Ezekiel describes as nothing. Then you got to hit on and find out in nothing what. And there's different vids. This one was 27 minutes. This one was 2 minutes, 6 minutes. And they're going to try to interpret and try to figure out, well, why and who and where. And good. That's, everybody has an idea what this thing is all about. Miss Ortiz, good morning, all the way from España, hometown. Yvonne Ortiz, all the way from Española. He measured the inside of the sanctuary. This is the Holy of Holies. Verse 5, he measured the wall 10.5 feet thick. Verse 6, there were 3 floors of these side rooms. So kind of attached to the outside wall of the tabernacle were 3 floors of rooms. 30 rooms on each of the 3 floors. So does that mean that there were 90 rooms on each side? There were supporting beams around the temple wall to hold up the side rooms, but they were freestanding, not attached to the wall itself. So these, as we've discovered before, were not leaning upon the temple itself. They were freestanding. And that's why I chose, never thought I'd do this, that's why I chose to use the Message Bible to help us navigate through through some of these chapters at least. Give us, something more that at least I can wrap my Maybe you think in cubits all the time. I don't. The side rooms all around the temple became wider from the first floor to the second to the third floor. They kind of stair-stepped, from first floor, second floor not as wide, and the third floor not as wide as the second floor. A staircase went from the bottom floor through the middle, then up to the top floor. And when you can look at all these artist renderings and you can try to see if you figure it out. To me, it's interesting. To you, you might say, my God, is that all we got to talk about? People are going to hell every day. There's earthquakes and tornadoes and people are dying. And we're talking about, that's because we're going through the Bible cover to cover, and that's where we're at. We had a lot of judgment. If you wanted to talk about judgment for sin, you wanted to talk about conviction, you want to talk about God with a challenging word, we were there throughout all the book of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. But here's where we're at right now. I observed that the temple had a 10.5-foot raised base around it. So notice every one of these levels is a little bit higher than the one that you previously walked through. I'm walking through it. How about you? You're walking through? I observed that the temple had a 10.5-foot thick raised bed around it, which provided a foundation for the side rooms. The outside walls of the side rooms were 8 3/4 thick. The open area between the side rooms of the temple, the priest rooms, was a 35-foot wide strip all around the temple. The priests, who were the priests? Remember, who were the priests? We've been through this morning already. They were the sons of Zadok. Not every son of Aaron was going to be ministering in this temple. Unlike the tabernacle of Moses and the temple of Solomon, it was just the sons of Zadok that were going to be ministering in the temple. The priest rooms was a 5-foot strip all around the temple. There were 2 entrances to the side rooms from the open area, one placed on the north side, the other on the south. There were 8 3/4 feet of open space all around. 8 3/4 feet of open space all around. The house that faced the temple courtyard was to the west, 122.5 feet wide, 8 3/4 foot thick walls. The length of the wall and building was 157.5 feet. Did we say detail? Did we say that everything was intricate in its design? You better believe we did. We went over all this stuff. just to give you an idea and to see how it's all going to work out. Now, let's hit 13 so we know where we left off, because I want to go back to the images on our search engine that we looked at and see if there's anybody. Where was it? It was here. Okay, so if you're with us, let me see if I can find something that's a little bit, and these are kind of small to begin. Oh, let's look at this one. Okay, so we're going to visit. Is it metaphorical or is it real? Okay, so if you're with us on Facebook or on YouTube, you can see this. What I'm showing. Oh, there's an advertisement for T-shirts. Here's the temple itself. Okay. Here's the second wall, the inner wall. This is what it's talking about here. These rooms that were 3 stories high, where the priests were going to have their rooms on this side and probably the back side, and then around this other side here would be the entrance. Remember, we talked about the entrance. That would be the second east gate. And then there would have been the porch. There would be the columns that it was talking about in the temple. And you can get an idea what this thing might look like. But let me tell you what, most of the time, what we think is going to happen and the way it happens, boom, are different. He measured the temple 175 feet long. The temple courtyard and the house, including its walls, measured 175 feet. The breadth of the front of the temple and the open area to the east was 175 feet. Okay? So yards, what is that? 25 and 33. About 56 yards, just a chip shot. He measured the length of the house facing the courtyard at the back of the temple, including the shelters on each side, 175 feet. Not 175 on one side and 176. Well, we had some extra material. We didn't know. No. Everything very precise, very concise. Just like the world that the Lord made on that day when he said, "Let there be," and there was. You say, well, this world, that's because sin came in, my brothers and sisters. That God's design was perfect. The garden was perfect. Everything was just perfect. And then corruption came in, a corruption that Jesus took care of on the cross and in the tomb when he rose again from the dead 2,000 years ago, and the restoration project has been going on for 2,000 years. You think your remodeling has been going on for a long time. Restoration project been going on for couple of thousand years. He measured the length, verse 15, of the house facing the courtyard at the back of the temple, including the shelters on each side, 175 feet. 100, the main sanctuary and the inner sanctuary and the vestibule facing the courtyard were paneled with wood and had window frames and door frames in all 3 sections, from floor to windows to the walls above that were paneled. So finally we get to see some of the material, the wood. Anyway, we're going to break for today. And we'll be back. We're going to put our bookmark on Ezekiel chapter 41, verse 17. Not for any good reason. It's just because we're running out of time, and that's where we're going to go. So we'll be back tomorrow. Thank you.
I'm here, not much, but do you